Good morning. This is Patrick Lee. It's time for Midweek Motivation Live. I hope everyone is doing fine today. Let me turn my monitor down here a little bit. I'm yelling at myself. I reserve all of that for you, not me. Welcome to Patrick Lee's Midweek Motivation Live therapy session for myself and also for your benefit. Just the camera a little bit. Up here on the 18th floor, the lighting and the heat. Now that it's summer, things change, and I'm always having to make some adjustments up here. The sun comes in the backside here of the windows of the office, and it's pretty warm, so we have to tone that down a little bit. Good to see everyone tuning in already. Hello, Sal, one of my first people, always ready to tune in every week. Appreciate that very much. This week, we're going to be talking about, one of the previous shows, we talked about rejection and a couple of different things and how to move on from that. Today, we're going to talk about hello or goodbye. When is a good time to leave an agreement or a relationship? How do I know if it's time to leave an agreement or relationship? And like I said, we've talked about rejection. We've talked about relationships. We've talked about adding people to your life. Good morning, Christine. Good to see you on here too. Hello, everybody that's tuning in, people watching live around the world by way of the World Wide Web. So good to see all of y'all every week that tune in for the show. But we've talked about the top 5 people to have in your life. We've talked about relationships in the past. Today, I want to talk to you today about how to know when it's time, when it's time to leave an agreement or a relationship. In the real estate world that I'm at and in other lines of business, there are many times that you enter into a relationship with an agreement. An agreement is much better than a preconceived notion of how things are going to happen, right? How many of you have entered into an agreement in the past and sometime down the line, things changed and that no longer was the same case, the same thing that you entered into the agreement understanding. So there are times that it's going to be time to leave an agreement or a relationship. If you're going to be adding to your top 5, right? We've said before, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. That you're going to be a combined average of the 5 people that are closest to you, the people that you hang around with every day. And whether that's spiritually, financially, emotionally, or in your relationships, the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with are the 5 people that are going to influence you the most, because you're going to either want to avoid the things that they do that may be good for you because it's a hard thing for you to understand, or you're going to be drawn into doing the things that they do because you want to be accepted in that circle or in the group that they are in, right? Hey, my buddy. Good to see you on here too, Terry. A lot of people watching every week. I love this. So, So when you're choosing your top 5, it's important to understand some of these things that we're going to talk about today. And there are people that were in my top 5 that are no longer there. And I may have been in some people's top 5 and didn't really know it. And I'm no longer in that top 5. How many of you have friends or family members, people that were close friends, confidants, and out of the, whether it was Corona this last year or it's other situations in your life, for some reason you look down the road and it's 6 months to a year later and you do not have a close relationship with that person anymore. Friend, family member, business partner. You just don't have that relationship anymore, right? And you're wondering what happened. Did that person leave the relationship? Did I leave the relationship, or did we just let it fall by the wayside? Hey, Ross, good to see you watching again too, all the way up from Colorado. Always love your comments and input as well. Good to see you, buddy. So sometimes that's just the case, right? You've been friends with someone, you're related to someone, and all of a sudden you look back and that relationship has changed, right? And you're wondering what happened. Did I leave that relationship? And well, the topic today is, how do I know if it's time to leave an agreement or a relationship? In the real estate world, we tell people a lot of times that just because you may have entered into a relationship to represent somebody in a transaction, your piece, that transaction is never worth your piece. And usually the less expensive a transaction is, the more needy that person becomes, needy, greedy, and overbearing and hateful. And there are times that you have to leave that relationship. We have walked away from numerous clients because of their attitude, whether it's an angry attitude, a greedy attitude, to where we get to the point to where we just have to tell that person, hey man, I would rather end this relationship with us on good terms and you go out and find someone else to help you, because at this point I don't think we're going to be able to meet your needs. And if that's the case, that's time to leave an agreement or a relationship, right? But one of the first signs when you're going to know it's time to leave is simply this: is there any excitement in what you're doing? Life-giving energy that comes from both parties in the relationship or the agreement. Maybe in the beginning, hey Marlene, good to see you watching too. Awesome. Maybe in the beginning of an agreement or relationship, everything was fun. It was exciting. You were walking down this road and you linked arms with people that you saw going down the same road you were, and you developed a relationship, a partnership, whether that's a marriage, a relationship with a friend, or a business relationship. Is there any excitement like that excitement that came along when you met that person and you entered into this relationship? Go all the way back to the Wizard of Oz, right? And Dorothy is trying to find the wizard. And as she goes down the road, she ends up encountering many strange characters, right? The Cowardly Lion, the Tin Woodsman, the Scarecrow. And as they go down the road, they link arms together and they agree to go do this life together, to go down this path together. And sometimes that's the case with you and me, where we've made an agreement. We've come alongside somebody and we've got this excitement. There's a smile on our face. There's a pep in our step, and we're going down the road to a common goal. But maybe that excitement has left on one side of that agreement. Someone is becoming more sluggish. Someone is less excited than you are. And maybe that's you. And you need to check yourself in the mirror and find out if that's you. Has your excitement level waned? Has it dropped? Are you no longer motivated by the things that motivated you when you started that journey? And that's a self-check that you really need to do for yourself, and then also for the other person. Does it seem like the relationship is becoming one-sided? You're the person sowing the seeds of motivation, energy, and excitement, and the other side is not. So therefore, one person is, you may be planting the seeds, and the other person is the person that is supposed to be watering the seeds, and they're not watering the seeds. And then all of a sudden you don't get a harvest, and you're like, hey, I did my part. I planted the garden. But all of a sudden there's nothing coming back. Hey, Jim, good to see you on here too. Has the excitement in what you're doing left? The life-giving energy that has to come from both parties in a relationship or in an agreement. And if that has left, then that may be one sign that it's time for you to move on. Here's another one. Has the goal changed from the beginning of the relationship? And did you both agree on that change? A lot of people, the common things to say right now is, hey man, we're all on the same team. We're playing the same game, and all of a sudden we're going down there for a touchdown and they move the goalpost. How many of you have heard that lately, right? Especially in the last couple of years. Every time we get close to scoring, they move the goalpost. Well, maybe the goal changed from the beginning of the relationship you're in too, the business relationship, the partnership, the marriage. You both had common goals, and now you seem to have lost sight of where the goalpost actually is. No one is scoring anything anymore. I'm just going to let that simmer for a second. Has the goal changed from the beginning of the relationship? Did you both agree on that change? And if both of you did not agree on that, one person is potentially taking advantage of the other, and you need to come back into agreement on that. You need to correct that, do a course correction. You need to get clarity. Number one, clarity in the goal again, refocus. We did talk about that rejection in the previous show, and that rejection is not always rejection. It's usually redirection, right? So here's a great time to get clarity, redirect, redefine the goal, and then get back on the same path. And that can usually be an easy course correction, right? But if that is not possible, that could be a time that it's time for one of you to leave that relationship. Has the relationship become completely one-sided? Completely one-sided. Sometimes it's, it's just not a relationship anymore. Maybe you just work for somebody and that person has simply said, hey, this isn't a relationship. You work for me. And these are my goals and dreams, and your goals and dreams don't really matter anymore. I'd like it if they aligned, but if they don't, it doesn't really matter. Hey, Pete, good to see you on here again as well. A lot of people watching this week. I love that. Sometimes that's the case. The relationship is simply one-sided. I need you to meet my needs, and I'm not here to meet your needs, right? I didn't sign up for that. You just worked for me. Well, maybe you had a misconceived perception that you were actually in a relationship when you were not. That's a good sign that it may be time to end that, to leave that. And that can be a business relationship as well. A lot of people have these business relationships and they don't understand that they simply have a product the other person needs. They have something they want to buy, or they want you to buy something from them. And that relationship is solely based upon you being able, or them being able to succeed financially or profit financially from the relationship. There's no relationship there. It's simply a sales transaction. So be able to define that, because that relationship being one-sided that way is not healthy. And it's okay. It's not toxic if it's something that you both come to understand that it's simply a sales transaction, and that's totally different. A sales never mistake a transaction for a relationship. Now, on the other side of that, relationships can turn into transactions, and they seldom or they frequently do, because when you develop a relationship with somebody, you start wanting to pour into that relationship, and you pour into that relationship emotionally, socially. You're there for that person. You start hanging out with that person, and then you start supporting them financially as well. There's this big triangle of life. And it's the physical, the emotional or social, and the monetary, the financial part of that life. And we start supporting our friends and the people that we're in relationship in. But very seldom does a sales transaction turn into a relationship, but many times does a relationship does turn into multiple sales transactions. Learn to recognize the difference between those two. You're going to be a lot happier in life. Trust me. Speaking of trust, in the relationship that you've been in, has the trust been broken? Maybe it was an unspoken trust or a mutually felt trust between you, and it's no longer there. A lot of people say, I was working with so-and-so, and then all of a sudden they just stabbed me in the back. I mean, man. And by my own admission and confession, I have left relationships good, and I have left relationships bad. And I'll be the first person to tell you there's nothing worse than the feeling of leaving a relationship improperly. But it is also very rewarding and sometimes hurtful, but rewarding when you do leave a relationship correctly. And that is still never seemed or supposed to be the correct way by the other party. And at that point, that is something that you are just going to have to live with. Never mistake this. You're going to have to live with the fallout of any relationship that you end up leaving, any agreement that you end up breaking. And that's something that you need to sort of weigh in advance. Okay, there's a method to that. But weighing that in advance, what are the pros and cons? I've told you many times, if you're having a hard time making a decision and prayer is not your number one way to come to an answer, take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle, write the advantages on one side and the disadvantages of that decision on the other side. And believe me, when you start weighing one side against the other, you will come to a much easier decision. If there are other people in the relationship with you that are on your side of that, you're not there to pull them into your side to try to get ammunition against another person. But if that's a person that is an incredible trust to you, a spouse or someone you're in a relationship that is someone that can also come alongside you and help you discuss that, weigh out the pros and cons, pray with you, and come to a more clear understanding of what you need to do. And that's the advice I give a lot of people when they want me to give them advice on situations. Hey, pray with me about this. I'd be happy to. Do you have someone you can get in agreement with me and besides me? because there is wisdom in a lot of counsel, seeking counsel. But has a trust been broken? And if that trust has been broken, even if it was an unspoken trust, a conceived trust is still a trust in your mind, and you're going to be the person that is left dealing with that fallout or with the results of that decision if you decide to leave. And that's going to bring us to the point that was actually in one of the previous shows, and that's this one. It's not me, it's you. I changed it just a little bit. It's not me, it's you. But rejection isn't always personal. Sometimes it's a rejection of the direction. That's happened to me in life, and I'm sure it's happened to you as well. You're in agreement with somebody, and all of a sudden they have rejected you, and it's not necessarily you. Sometimes it's the direction that you're going, and you can simply not stay aligned with that vision. That basically a lot of the things that we've just talked about happen to have come into play. You had a conceived notion, a conceived trust. You communicated that with the other person in the agreement or the partnership or the relationship, right? And then out of the blue, things start changing. You find that you're going down a road that you no longer want to travel on. You thought that the road was going here, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, we went off on a tangent somewhere, and now all of a sudden we're going, we were heading to Dallas, and now we're heading to Oklahoma City, and I don't understand why. So sometimes that rejection isn't a personal rejection, a rejection of the relationship. Sometimes is you recognize that you have to make a course correction, and you can no longer stay aligned with the direction that you're going in. And if you want to end up in Dallas, if Dallas is the goal, then you're going to have to take an exit. You're going to have to get back on the right road to the goal that you have set. I posted a picture online last night that I came across, the thought came across, and I needed to find a good photo. And it was just simply a guy sitting on top of a mountain alone. And it said, if everyone you loved could not go to the mountain with you, would you still go? And that was a little soul searching moment I was having at the moment. It's if everyone you loved couldn't go to the mountaintop with you, would you still go? Or would you stay behind with them? And that's a question that you have to ask yourself. Is that something that you're able to live with? Do you have goals and dreams? We talk about them on the show all the time. If you do, man, I hope you do. I'm here to help motivate you to have those. You know what? The Bible says that if we will focus on God, if we will give all of these things to God, and if we will follow God, seek his face, then he will give us dreams. He will give us the desires of our heart. He will help us achieve those goals as long as we do that first. So that's what I want you to always think about. Do you have good goals? Do you have good dreams? Are you following them? Is your goal set up somewhere in those? And are the people you are aligned with going the same direction? And if they were, and now they're not, maybe it's time for you to leave that relationship. You know what I mean? And the hardest part about it is that sometimes these people are family members. Sometimes they're the ones that we love and trust the most. I'll always tell you this: the people that you love the most or love you the most will hurt you the most. And it's just simply true. It seems to be an unavoidable part of life. I don't like it. I have found it in my own experience to be true, So, and I am guilty on both sides. I have hurt people, and I'll be the first person to tell you that I've hurt people. People have hurt me many times. Misguided dreams, goals, motivations, many things are always behind that. And we have to live with the fallout of that. So get clarity in what your goals are, what the relationship was, what the agreement, the business agreement, the transaction is that you have. Make sure you always keep that clear. The Bible says to write the vision plainly that they may run who read it. And that means if it's not big enough or clear enough for everyone to see it, explain it, and describe it easily, then that's not a clear enough goal. Something you need to get clarity on for sure is that goal. And then sometimes that one party in the relationship becomes toxic to the relationship or agreement. Maybe this is a time that you need to think about leaving a relationship. Sometimes one person in that simply changes, and you're like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And they start sabotaging the relationship or the agreement. And we have had that happen in real estate, in many different things that I've been involved in the past. I worked for one particular company, the only company I've ever been fired from in my life, where one time we had a mutual agreement for me to leave a company for my own safety, was when I was 20 years old and I was a taxi driver for a yellow cab in the middle of winter one year. And I happened to end up wrecking a couple of yellow cabs out doing taxi work as a kid. And it became a mutual agreement at that time. I told my boss, I said, I don't think I'm cut out for this, and I'm going to have to go find another job. And he said, I agree. So that was not a termination, but it was a determination by both of us that it was time to end that relationship. Probably why I'm here healthy and talking to you today. But the only one time I was ever fired from a job, I was working at a burger joint, and a party who did not get the job that I was hired for became a friend with the owner of the company, and then started poisoning that relationship to the point of where it became toxic for me to stay there anymore. And he ended up firing me and hiring his new friend. And within about 2 years, that company went out of business. And I just believe that he dealt with the fallout of how he ended that relationship and treated it right. So it happens to all of us. But sometimes one party becomes toxic in that relationship, and you simply cannot tolerate that anymore. I don't recommend you ever stay in a toxic relationship, whether it's your marriage. I'm not a proponent of divorce, but there are many times where it's better to end that relationship and remain sane. It's better than going out and doing something horrific or living a life of complete misery while one person is simply abusing you, or you're abusing them. If it's you, shame on you, knock it off, get some help. But if one person has become toxic, it would definitely be time to leave that relationship. And then remember this, some people aren't toxic. You may say, well, man, I'm in a situation right now where people are, man, it's toxic. It's crazy. And I don't think I can stay. Well, remember this, some people aren't toxic. They just don't have the same level of commitment that you do. And if that's the case, it doesn't mean they're toxic. It just means they're not committed. So people who are not committed do not do committed things, right? You may be busting your hump in there every day, knocking it out, doing the grind, nose to the grindstone, right? Shoulder to the wheel. And they're just not going to do it. Well, this doesn't mean they're toxic. They just don't have the same commitment level you do, or they don't feel qualified or committed or enthusiastic to maintain the same path that you're on anymore. And that's okay. If that's the case, remember this: before you leave, make sure you have an honest discussion about the situation and allow the other person the opportunity to make a change or decide not to. The ball's in their court. Unless the situation is truly toxic, at that point, I always say, get out. If they're not willing to change, then you need to leave, because you are in charge of your own safety, your own peace, your own sanity. And I tell everyone, always follow your peace. If you don't have peace about the situation that you're in, it's probably time to leave that situation. If it's toxic, just get out. Hey, Kathy, good to see you on here too. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it so much. But before you leave, make sure you have an honest discussion about the situation. The other person deserves, and like I said, unless the situation is truly toxic. If they're not toxic, if they're misaligned, if they're changing the goalposts continuously, if they're not committed, they're not enthusiastic anymore about what it is that you're doing, and maybe it's time to leave, you at least owe it to that person, if you can, if they're not toxic, to have a conversation with them and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm feeling. Don't always count so much on your feelings, because remember, your feelings only tell you what you feel. And your feelings lie to you all the time. And they say, this is how we feel, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the reality. Okay. So before you leave, make sure you have an honest discussion about the situation. Give the other person the opportunity to make a change, a course correction. Apologize and say, man, I'm sorry, I'm going through something, because maybe we don't know what the other person's going through at home, in their other work life, or something else that's going on, and how it's affecting the relationship that you're in now. But give them a chance to make that course correction, or decide not to. It'll become pretty apparent when you're having that conversation with them if they are sincere or not in the conversation. Hey, Lisa, love you. Good to see you on here also. So make sure you give them the opportunity. Like I said, it will become apparent when you're talking to them that you will feel in your spirit that either they're sincere about making a change. Maybe they did not realize how much their actions were hurting you or causing you to want to leave the relationship. But if they do, and they're genuine in that, then they're going to want to come back and make a change on that. You both come back together, you describe, you get clarity in the situation, you get back aligned, make the course correction back towards the common goal, make sure that those are common again, and then you can move forward. And if they don't, then it's time to leave that relationship. And I would recommend that you do, because no relationship is worth your peace. No relationship is worth your safety, for sure. And if you have a goal that you want to get to, sometimes you can't always get there with the same people. Hot air and helium rise at different speeds, right? So would you rather take off in a hot air balloon, or would you rather take off in a helium balloon? Or would you rather take off in a jet? Because if you've got somewhere to go, you can get there faster by yourself. But if you want to enjoy life and get there together with a lot of friends, you can go a whole lot further with friends if you go together. Just make sure that you're aligned and go in the same place, and you're going to have a great trip. Hey guys, remember, courage begins at the end of your comfort zone. If this has made you a little bit uncomfortable, I hope so. I hope it's caused you to take a look at yourself on the inside and say, hey, I can do better. Maybe you're the person that's having a sucky week and you need to suck it up and look in the mirror and do better. Maybe your enthusiasm is waning from the relationship that you've been in, and maybe someone's on the verge of leaving you. Wouldn't it be nice if I helped you take a look in the mirror and correct that, get clarity back in your goals again, and you'll be able to maintain those relationships before they are lost? That's my goal, and I hope to motivate you to do that. So if this has been for you, if you've enjoyed this today, be sure to come back every week. Like and love the video, share it with your family and friends. I appreciate that. I do send out Patrick Lee Group swag to people from time to time when they share the video. Books, caps, could be anything, music. Never know what it's going to be for me next. I appreciate that. And always, as a service to me, if you know anyone looking to buy a home or sell a home or invest in real estate, have them reach out to me at PatrickLee.work. That digital business card is in the comments below this video. Created by Nick Krim and Michael K at Content Cardz with a Z. I appreciate y'all so much. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.